Part 80. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 792. Xiao Yiwan is dead. He paid to kill people. The Nye supermarket incident was not over yet, and now he still wants to kill people. The relationship between uncle and nephew is not a good reputation in the first place. The crime he committed is too bad and the impact is too great. Even if he can't escape the death penalty, he will spend almost the remaining 20 years in prison, and because the nature of his crime is so bad, he will be treated well by his fellow inmates in prison. Xiao Yiwan is dead. He paid to kill people. The Nye supermarket incident was not over yet, and now he still wants to kill people. The relationship between uncle and nephew is not a good reputation in the first place. The crime he committed is too bad and the impact is too great. Even if he can't escape the death penalty, he will spend almost the remaining 20 years in prison, and because the nature of his crime is so bad, he will be treated well by his fellow inmates in prison. Xiao Yian waited at the airport for a whole day, from morning till night. She knew that Xiao Yiwan would not come again, but she still held on to a glimmer of hope, but the number of people around her gradually disappeared from the few to the many, and then from the many to the few. She realized that Xiao Yiwan really would not come. She had been sitting for a whole day without eating anything, and she was so weak that she seemed to collapse immediately. Thinking that she could start over after getting rid of all this, Xiao Yiwan drew a big cake for her, and when she was about to eat it, she found that it was just a drawn cake. It looked good, but it could not satisfy her hunger. She didn't know what to do in the future. She raised her head. Today's news was being broadcast on the TV. Xiao Yian understood what every word meant, but she couldn't understand it when they were put together. Xiao Yiwan was caught and he paid for the murder. Murder, he ordered people to rape and kill Lu Yao. Why didn't she understand? Xiao Yian's face showed confusion. But his body was shaking. In fact, she understood. She knew her little uncle's character, so after Xiao Yiwan said he wanted to vent his anger for her, she transferred 20,000 yuan to Lu Yao's account in advance. But she has become accustomed to using this expression to disguise herself, so no matter how scared she is or how anxious she is, she still pretends to be weak, helpless, and innocent. "Miss, are you okay?" someone seemed to ask her, and she shook her head hastily. However, the enthusiastic people insisted on sending her to the hospital when they saw her like this. Her photo had not yet been exposed. Xiao Yian suddenly didn't dare to think about the consequences. She wanted to hide. She was afraid of hearing her parents' voices. She was afraid of seeing the familiar faces of her family. She held her head and screamed at the top of her lungs. Xiao Yiwan was convicted because when he sexually assaulted Xiao Yian was only in junior high school. She was a minor at that time. Regardless of whether she had a relationship with Xiao Yiwan voluntarily or not, legally speaking, Xiao Yiwan has committed a crime, and people will laugh at her, but it is Xiao Yiwan who is most condemned. The assets originally sold by Xiao Yiwan were all distributed to the Nye family as compensation for the Nye family. Nye's father was acquitted and he was imprisoned for more than a year. The state will make certain compensation because of this matter. In the past, the Nye family was the sealed house was returned by the court. Half a year later, Lily went to Qiao's house with 20,000 yuan. The Qiao family today is even worse than the Nye family back then. This happened, the Qiao family was raped, the Qiao family members were implicated, and many people were too embarrassed to go out. Xiao Yian's grandfather almost died of anger, and Qiao's family members disassociated themselves from Xiao Yian's parents. The two of them couldn't stay in the work unit any longer. The Qiao family, which used to be a relatively well-off family, was now even worse off than the Nye family back then. "Thank you, Miss Nye. Thank you for visiting our home." Yian, regardless of past suspicions, Xiao Yian hid in her own world. She suffered from severe autism and locked herself in her own world. She needed treatment. She needed to spend a lot of money. Although Chiao's father and Chiao's mother hated her for being shameless and doing these things, after all, she was his daughter and he couldn't really let her go on like this. But the family's money was spent. Seeing that there was no money, Chiao Yian's illness became more and more serious. When the Chiao family's parents were feeling despair, they didn't expect Lily to send money. They were grateful to Lily. Chiao Yiwan did what Chiao Yiwan did to the Nai family. It's hard for her not to care about such an excessive thing. It's not that Lily doesn't care, she just wants to pay back the 20,000 yuan that Qiaoyan gave to Lily Nai in the plot, and doesn't want the original owner to owe Qiaoyan anything. Now that she has done it, naturally she doesn't want to stay any longer. The Nai family has restored its former glory. When the accident happened, Nai's father did not escape but instead sent away the family property and compensated for it. It seemed to be a matter of course at the time. But now after the real murderer was caught, it seemed to be righteous. The Nai family supermarket reopened, and even business is booming than ever. He went to the prison to take a look at Chiao Yiwan. It had only been a few months. He seemed to be much older. He limped when he walked, and even turned half of his body sideways when he sat down. When he saw Lily, he was stunned, and Lily rushed. He waved, with a sullen face and a look of resentment in his eyes. Lily smiled and pulled out a photo on her phone to show him. She moved very quickly, but Chiao Yiwan recognized Lao Gao's face at a glance. He suddenly shouted loudly, "It's her, she framed me." He thought of what he had experienced in the past few months and shouted crazily. He yelled and refused to listen to the police's greetings. Instead, he wanted to hit someone. In the end, he was knocked down and dragged away by the police who couldn't bear it anymore. Chiao Yiwan hunted geese all day long, but he never thought that one day he would be pecked and blinded by geese. He was unwilling to give in, but it was too late to give in now. This is what Lily wants, otherwise she would have ended Chiao Yiwan's life long ago. Torturing him slowly like this now is the most painful thing for him. A few months later, Qin Zheng settled his plans to go abroad and contacted overseas schools. Before he left, he wanted to find Lily for dinner, but Lily refused. He also hoped that Lily could send him off. After thinking about it, he would have nothing to do tomorrow. Lily agreed. After Qin Zheng found out about her a year ago, Lily did not kill him at that time, but went to the place where the incident occurred afterwards, caught the corpse cooking and fed it into Qin Zheng's mouth. This thing would lurk in his body. If Qin Zheng, if he wants to talk nonsense, she will kill him. If he doesn't talk, maybe she will lure out the poison for him in the future. At the airport, Qin Zheng was carrying a simple suitcase. He was going to study in Germany. He was about to leave now. He stared at Lily. "Are you really not going to study abroad? When you go abroad, you can supervise me and watch me at any time. Have you ever told your secret?" That night after the accident, Lily asked him to abandon the car in the suburbs and took him all the way back. It was really flying, just like in a martial arts movie. He seemed to have discovered a different side of his old classmate, and the two of them have been together since then. In Qin Zheng's heart, although Lily had threatened him, he felt that he and Lily had a common secret. They had not interacted with each other in the past 3 years of high school. During this year of college, he took the initiative to get close to Lily, but despite his efforts, the effect was not very obvious. Lily shook her head casually. Another plane landed, and a large number of passengers came out of the customs. She glanced at Qin Zheng. "Let's go, I'm going back." Qin Zheng couldn't help but laugh, initially with a bitter smile. There was a self-deprecating smile behind him. He used to be blind, but now he is smart, but people don't like him. A figure mixed in the crowd and looked towards Lily. Lily felt someone looking at her and turned her head. Qin Zheng wanted to say something more, but Lily laughed and ran faster and faster. It was a tall and thin man wearing a gray-blue shirt. His black suit was hung between his arms. He had a briefcase in his hand. Lily threw herself into his arms. "How could you be here?" Lily was surprised and happy. Li Yangzi's breath quickly surrounded her. Li Yangzi hugged her into his arms and felt Qin Zheng's side not far away. He carefully moved his position. Covering Lily under his own figure, he spoke. "Last time I felt Yun Munan's aura and I entered the mission. He entered the mission where Lily left last time. Yun Munan was very cunning. When he is in the starry sky, Li Yangzi is a high-altitude god. He can control these worlds, but when he entered the mission, he was just a person whose strength was suppressed. He failed to bring Yun Munan back, but was trapped in the mission by Yun Munan's tricks. The exact same situation as when he and Ye Changjin were combined before happened again. He and Yun Munan temporarily became one, and no one could get along with each other. He could not return to the starry sky for the time being. Lily had forgotten Qin Zheng not far away, and let Li Yangzi hold her in his arms as she walked out of the airport. Listening to Li Yangzi talk about his unlucky things, she wondered if Li Yangzi was aloof in the past. Once she heard that something like this happened to him, although Lily was a little worried, she still couldn't help laughing with some gloating. Qin Zheng laughed again when he saw their figures walking further and further away. He was not someone who couldn't afford to lose, but it was just a pity. Such a girl who matched him in every aspect was lost because he misjudged her. It's not that he likes Lily, definitely not, it's just because she matches him very well. Her academic performance matches him well, her rationality and calmness match him well, her decisiveness and firmness match him well. He couldn't remember anything else. When he said he wouldn't tell anyone about her murder, it was definitely not out of fear. It was just something that Qin Zheng himself didn't want to admit. The ancients said that a hero saves a beautiful woman without any repayment, so he pledges himself to her. When he saw these allusions from the ancients, he just felt that the ancients were so stupid that he wanted to laugh. But when it happened to him, Qin Zheng found that he could not laugh anymore. Not only will a beautiful woman want to commit herself to him after being rescued, but it turns out that a man will also have the same emotion of admiration when he is rescued. His first wrong love made him fall in love when he faced the heroine for the second time. Unable to control himself, let the adoration slowly become deeper and deeper, so that it finally wrapped around him like a vine. It's a pity that it seems a little late. He has never been an indecisive person. His parents praised him for being decisive and sensible since he was a child, and his self-esteem did not allow him to get entangled. When he broke up with Jiao Yin, he felt uncomfortable with his pain, but he calmly got through it. It's not a breakup this time. He doesn't have to live or die. He checked in his luggage and got on the plane to Germany. Qin Zheng didn't want to admit that at the moment when the plane took off, he felt a little regretful. To stay. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 793. 15 years later, commerce in the imperial capital was extremely developed, and the business district was about to move outwards. The abandoned factory was also found, and 7 white corpses were also found inside. Many years later, Lily used the powder to collect poisonous insects, which attracted a lot of snakes, insects, rats, and ants. This place was originally a suburb, with a humid environment, and sparsely populated areas. It was still underground, and if the body had turned into bones normally, it should have taken nearly a year or so, and these bugs had eaten the corpse cleanly in less than 2 days, leaving only the skeleton. The bones lay there for 15 years, which added a great deal of trouble to the reconnaissance team. Difficulty: when the skeletons were first discovered, the police had already circled the scene. Experts concluded that these skeletons should have died 16 or 17 years ago. As for the cause of death, in addition to the broken kneecaps of several corpses, many places have been destroyed by bugs, but experts cannot find out any specific details. There is not even a single piece of clothing around here, all of which have been devoured by bugs. It is too difficult to find out the reason why these people appeared there. Due to the long time, it is very difficult to find the footprints, especially when Lily was carried in by Lao Gao and others. The police have repeatedly ruled it out, and to this day the investigation tools were thousands of times more sophisticated than before, but no useful information was still found. High-tech was used on the surrounding blood stains, but no large area of blood was found in the factory. In the end, the case was broadcast lively on TV for several times. God, it's a pity that nothing happened. Because this case was so special and bizarre, it was played lively on the phone for a while. By the time Xiao Yiwan in prison learned about it, it was already more than a month later. He actively wanted to contact the boss to get out of prison. He said that he knew the identities of these people and who the real murderer was. Lily showed him the photos that day, and he saw the hideous faces of Lao Gao and others, and he wanted to commute his sentence. At this point, Xiao Yiwan can no longer think of love. The decades he spent in prison were almost like years. The people in the prison looked down on him and often bullied him. He was beaten severely by others here. At first he would fight back, but the beatings became more severe each time. At first he still missed Xiao Yan, but later he wanted to go out. He even thought about death for more than 10 years. The poisoning of Nai's supermarket was too big and caused many deaths. He was sentenced to 20 years. There was no possibility of a reprieve. After enduring for so long, he could no longer endure it. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he asked to surrender in the hope that he would be able to redeem himself and win leniency from his superiors. He revealed the identity of Lao Gao and others, and said the murderer behind it was Lily. When the police became aware of the news, after comparing the DNA of Lao Gao and others, it is indeed similar to what he said. The case has begun to make progress at this time. The police station is very energetic about this. Although it is difficult to find out what happened in the past 15 years, so many people died. People, the pressure from the top is tight, the civilians are also watching carefully, the police are under great pressure, and they know there are key points to solve the case. This made the police extremely excited. Much of the information from 15 years ago has been lost. But after the police investigated, they found that on the day Xiao Yiwan mentioned 15 years ago, when Lily was in school, she had never left at all. During her 4 years at school, she never skipped class almost every day and went back to the dormitory to sleep every night. She never left the imperial capital on the day Xiao Yiwan said. Although sometimes she was delayed returning to the dormitory because she might be checking information or in other places such as the library or classroom, she returned to the dormitory every night. If she really killed someone, if a little girl wanted to use her power to kill those 7 strong men, it would take at least a lot of time to deploy and conduct on-site inspections, as well as the assistance of some tools. It would take at least a lot of time to make a preliminary judgment on such a killing method. For several days, Lily had no time to commit the crime. The most important thing is that Xiao Yiwan confessed that on the day when Lao Gao and others were killed, a man named Qin Zheng, one of her classmates, saw the news on the internet and called back, saying that he and Lily were together that day. The reason why he remembered it like this clearly, Qin Zheng said that that was the day Lily agreed to date him for the first time. The case has reached a deadlock again, and how could Xiao Yiwan tell the reason why Lily was a murderer? The police suddenly began to doubt, remembering that a girl named Lu Yao called the police and claimed that she had been raped by several men and almost killed someone. They were silenced until Xiao Yiwan went to jail, and those few people took the initiative to surrender. It is possible that Lao Gao and others were like those people, who were hired by Xiao Yiwan to kill, but they died in the end for unknown reasons. Xiao Yiwan added more crimes to his crime and received a few more years of punishment. He originally thought he could be released from prison. When he knew that his release time was far away, he burst into tears. At the other end of the city, the much older Shen Qi was holding a cabbage basket with his left hand, following a middle-aged woman. The woman scolded him as a waste with an impatient expression. He did not say a word, his back was a little hunched, and his right hand hanging by his legs, trembling slightly. Ever since Lily broke his hand, he couldn't feel it at first. He excitedly joined the armed police force, but less than a year after joining the team, he began to find that he was gradually unable to use his right hand. The school advised him to go home and think about it and let him take the formal college entrance examination route. But I have put down my studies for more than a year, how can I pick them up now? His time was wasted, and his hands began to lose control every year. When he went to the hospital for a checkup 2 years later, the doctor said that his right hand had bone necrosis. If it was discovered early, maybe he could find a way to treat it, but now he just needs surgery. It's too late to put it in with artificial brackets. He is not good at literature or martial arts, and only has a high school diploma. If he hadn't found a part-time job through his parents' connections in the early years, I'm afraid it would be difficult for him to find a job now. Xiao Yan naturally couldn't think about it anymore. As soon as the relationship between Xiao Yan and Xiao Yiwan broke out, his heart went from shock at the beginning to despair later. He followed his parents' arrangement and married the current woman, but because he didn't make much money and his hands were because of his disability, his wife doesn't think highly of him and often hits and scolds him. The TV was playing annotations by experts and professors on the 7 skeletons of Laogao. When the host was talking about a prisoner named Xiao Yiwan who proposed a criminal suspect, no one else believed the name the host said. A skinny girl can kill 7 men in an instant. But Shen Qi believes it. A few nights before the senior high school exam, he would never forget the scene when Lily, like a demon, knocked him and several of his brothers to the ground, which ruined his life. Thinking that now I have to live a lifeless life. Lao Gao and others turned into 7 white bones, and Shen Qi's crippled right hand began to tremble even more violently. This time Nai Beihi's wish was successfully fulfilled, and Lily returned to the starry sky alone. Unfortunately, Li Yangzi was trapped in the mission and could not come back. There was one person missing in the starry sky, which seemed a bit deserted. Her information board was quickly displayed. Although there was no rest time for entering the mission so quickly, Lily was no longer the Lily who had just entered the mission that day. Her mental quality was much stronger than before. When she saw the information appeared, he was not the one who would still be affected by the mission. There wasn't much psychological pressure. I just looked at the information calmly and smiled. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 87, out of 100. Appearance, 91, out of 100. Physical strength, 77, 100 full points. Force, 74, out of 100 points. Spirit, 82, out of 100. Reputation, 34, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Gu Technique, Star Body Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements, and Bagua, slightly dabbled in. Charisma, 65, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. During this mission, Lily's force value increased by 2 points, while her reputation value dropped by 1 point. The extra point of increase in force value should mean that she completed the task and made the original owner very satisfied. Therefore, the reason why he gave her a blessing was because Li Yangzi was not here and no one gave her an explanation. As for the decrease in reputation, Lily guessed that it was because she killed someone and caused a big fuss. Lily couldn't tell what the benefits of reputation were. Anyway, she didn't find anything troublesome when doing tasks after it dropped, so she didn't think about it anymore. Soon, The familiar feeling came when the task was transferred, and she closed her eyes again. Stop making trouble. Yuan called me right now. She must have told me something. I'll go and be back in a while. Lily was still in a daze when a man with a deep voice spoke in her ear, whispering, and throwing the soft fabric onto her body. She couldn't help but shrink back, and there was the sound of belt buckling coming from over there. After a while, the footsteps gradually faded away, the door was opened and closed, and there was a dead silence in the room. Lily felt resentment in her heart, and tears burst out of her eyes. She lay there for a while, gradually regaining her consciousness, and then she opened her eyes. The light in the room was extremely dark. She reached to the bedside to turn on the light, and then she saw clearly that this was a very spacious and simply decorated bedroom. Judging from the furnishings and sofas in the room had a low-key luxury feel. She was lying naked on the bed. When the unknown man left just now, he threw a pile of clothes on her chest to cover it. The scenery on the chest. Lily sat up and put on her clothes first. She got out of bed, opened the door and went out. The room where the original owner was located was on the second floor. When she opened the door, there was a large balcony around the corner. She could see the scene in the hall downstairs. It was already dark outside. A woman in her 30s was clearing the coffee table in the hall downstairs. When she heard the sound of the door opening upstairs, she subconsciously raised her head and looked at Lily. "Miss Wei, the eldest young master is out." She did seem to hear the sound of driving just now. Lily nodded numbly. The woman's expression was a little timid. "Miss Wei, do you want to have a midnight snack?" Lily shook her head and refused, taking advantage of the moment when the man went out. She had to receive the plot information first, not to mention she wasn't hungry at all at the moment. Back to her room, although the man drove away, she didn't know when he would come back. Lily went back to the room and locked the door without saying anything, then went into the small toilet that came with the bedroom and locked the door as well. Then he put down the toilet seat, sat on it and began to absorb the plot. Wei Bei he didn't know who her biological father was since she was a child. She grew up with her mother. At that time, Wei's mother took care of her alone and had no serious job. Therefore, she suffered a lot during her childhood. In addition, Mother Wei was silly and good-natured. Even when she was not well off, she occasionally helped others, so the life of mother and daughter was tied for a time. During the most difficult period, the two mothers and daughters picked up unwanted food thrown away at the vegetable market and took it back to wrap their stomachs. And because Mother Wei was a good person and sometimes helped others, she soon owed a lot of money. Sometimes the mother and daughter were driven to their wits' end and began to move constantly. The deepest impression in Lily Wei's mind when she was young was that she envied others saying go home. She has no home and no friends. Because every time she stayed in a place for a short time, she and her mother would be forced to move again. She had no money to go to school, so she followed her mother every day, looking at every stranger with some hesitation and fear. What she was most afraid of was the debtors. When she got home, her mother took her and knelt down to beg. "I hope people can relax a little bit, but if they don't have self-esteem, they won't be moved at all." When the young Wei Bei saw the way these people looked at her, she felt the most inferior in her heart, but she did not dare to say it out. When she was 6 years old, mother and daughter were desperate, and Mother Wei met another man in her life, who loved her. And she raised a home for the two mothers and daughters, paid off the debts for Wei's mother. Wei Bei finally stabilized, she started to have a family, she started to have a father, she was able to go to school, and her stepfather sent her to school when she was 7 years old. When she went to school, Wei's mother became pregnant in the same year, and the family was happy. Wei Bei thought she could live a happy life from now on. When Wei's mother was pregnant, because of her early malnutrition, she did not work after the pregnancy. Instead, Wei Bei's stepfather worked alone to support the mother and daughter. Wei's mother was not idle at home. She is a good handler at housework and is kind-hearted. She is also helpful and everyone around her likes her. Although her family was not well off, she loved to be charitable, and sometimes she would share some of what she could not bear to eat with others. She was more than 6 months pregnant, and her belly was pitifully small. When Wei Rui was born, looking at her younger brother, Wei Bei I was so distressed that I almost cried. He weighed less than 4 pounds and was pitifully thin. The doctor said that he was severely deprived of nutrition and was stunted. Mother Wei had a difficult delivery when she gave birth to him. She was in pain for several hours until the final examination revealed that his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. If he wanted to give birth, the doctor recommended a cesarean section. In the past, Wei's mother was kind and generous when she helped others. It was the Wei family's turn to borrow money from others, but they found that it was difficult to borrow money these days. Her stepfather was far away at the construction site and could not come back now. Wei Bei was begging for help from door to door at the door of the hospital ward. Borrowed 500 yuan, paid a deposit for Wei's mother, and she was pushed to the operating table. Because of the long delay, Wei Rui's brain suffered from severe hypoxia. For more than 4 months, other people's children grew fat and cute, but he was as thin as a cat. He only grew a head but no body at all. When he cried, his voice sounded like a meowing cat, pitifully weak. After being sent to the hospital, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Such a thing happened at home, and Wei's mother was in tears all day long. She was almost immersed in her own grief. The responsibility of taking care of her younger brother fell on the young Wei Lily. She did her homework after school every day. Carrying her brother's disease on her back is very troublesome. She has to take care of her brother for the rest of her life. She knows that this disease costs a lot of money. She has to study hard and raise her thin brother to be fat and white in the future. The stepfather worked hard on the construction site because of his son's illness. Finally, he fell from above while working at high altitude. This bad news was like the last straw that crushed the family. Wei Lily's childhood, which had been stable for several years, once again started her previous move due to the death of her stepfather. Although her husband is dead, the place where she works has lost more than 200,000 yuan. Mother Wei holds the money. She is a good person. Sometimes when she sees a cat or dog on the roadside, she is reluctant to see them in trouble and she is reluctant to eat. She would also buy them to feed them. When people in need asked her to borrow money, she never refused. The more than 200,000 yuan was originally planned to be enough for the family to eat and drink for several years, but in the hands of Mother Wei, it was destroyed in less than half a year. People borrowed them under various names, and the family came to a miserable end. During the most difficult time, the family lived under a bridge pier. Wei Rui, who was less than 2 years old, was so hungry that she cried with her mouth wide open as if she was about to die. At that time, Wei Bei swore that she would never be an abuser like her mother in this life. Good person, she looks down on Mother Wei and doesn't like her. She wanted to be a rich person and never end up in this situation again. The family environment was not good, but she studied hard and ranked first every year. The teachers at the school arranged donations for her. From junior high school to high school, she passed the key exam with excellent results. After her senior year in high school, she took care of her for convenience. My younger brother gave up his qualifications to be sent abroad and instead stayed in China to study at university. After graduation, he signed a contract with a multinational company with an annual salary of 150,000 yuan, and Wei's family gradually settled down. In a certain cooperation, Wei Bei met Zhu Mingchu, the future leader of Zhu's enterprise. When she saw Zhu Mingchu, who was handsome, elegant, and came from a wealthy family, she met Zhu Mingchu. Wei Bei was moved. In the past few years, She had studied hard to get ahead in the future and had no time to fall in love. Although she had no experience in love, Wei Bei was smart and ambitious. Zhu Mingchu was soon fascinated, and the two started dating. The Zhu family started out in real estate. Zhu Mingchui's family only has an only son, and a younger sister, Zhu Yuanyuan. Zhu Mingchui is already 27 years old, and it is logical that he is already old enough to fall in love. When he brought Wei Bei home, but Zhu Yuanyuan seemed to dislike Wei Lili very much. Women are the most sensitive to women. Wei Lili once vaguely mentioned this matter to Zhu Mingchui, but he just said that Wei Lili was thinking wildly and did not take it to heart. Wei Bei worked hard to please the Zhu family, and even Zhu Yuanyuan, who didn't like her, tried her best to please, and finally got Zhu Mingchu to agree to marry her, but the longer she and Zhu Mingchu stayed together, the more Wei Bei discovered that something was wrong between him and Zhu Yuanyuan. Zhu Mingchui was her first love. Although she was interested in Zhu Mingchui's external conditions at first, she also had some thoughts of trying to climb up the dragon and the phoenix, but they have been together for a long time. However, Wei Bei still liked Zhu Mingchu in her heart. Whenever she had a fight with his sister, he would always side with Zhu Yuanyuan, which made Wei Bei very unfamiliar and felt a little aggrieved. Her life in the Zhu family was not easy. The eldest lady Zhu Yuanyuan didn't like her and often gave her a hard time at home. The Zhu family sometimes turned a blind eye to this. At first, Wei Bei also thought about whether to be with Zhu Mingchu, but she was unwilling to do so. In particular, the mother is still as good as before, and the younger brother's condition is getting worse and worse. No matter how much money she had, she might not be able to support these two people even if she emptied it out every year. She needed someone to rely on, so she stayed with Zhu Mingchui. Later, Zhu Mingchui finally recognized her. "Make her your wife." After the two got married, Zhu Yuanyuan began to become more active and made a lot of friends. Sometimes she even stayed out at night. Occasionally at midnight, Zhu Mingchu and his wife had already gone to bed. Occasionally, they would call Zhu Mingchu when they were playing outside. Accompanying her, Zhu Mingqi responded to her requests. Wei Bei was forced to endure it at first, but later he couldn't bear it anymore, and the relationship with Zhu Yuanyuan deteriorated rapidly. She later discovered that Zhu Yuanyuan was not Zhu Mingqi's biological sister. The reason why she was targeted like that before was just because Zhu Yuanyuan liked Zhu Mingqi from the moment she was adopted by the Zhu family. She knew that Zhu Mingqi was not interested in her. She always felt unwilling to accept the kind of love between a man and a woman, so she had a special hatred for Wei Lili and provoked her everywhere. When the two had an argument about Mao Dun, Zhu Yuanyuan pointed at the door of the Zhu family and told Wei Bei to get out, scolding her for being shameless and marrying into the Zhu family just for the Zhu family's money. Wei Bei had had high self-esteem since she was a child, and after receiving such an insult, Zhu Mingchu didn't speak for her immediately. Instead, he stood on his sister's side and asked her to go back to her parents' home for a few days. She packed her luggage in the middle of the night, as if Wei Bei was being kicked out of Zhu's house. My heart is filled with resentment. That night, Wei's mother once again got into trouble. Her brother was seriously ill, but Wei's mother didn't know it right away. When she found out, it was already very serious and she had to be sent to the hospital immediately. At that moment, Wei Bei had no money, and she married after giving it to Zhu Mingchu. She resigned from her original company and worked as his assistant at Zhu's company. When she was working, she agreed that her salary would be settled at the end of the year. Zhu Mingchu was responsible for her daily food and drink. If she had other expenses, she would record them in her account. As a result, she had no money at all. Although she had a lot of money when she worked in the past, firstly, she did not work for long, and secondly, she could not save money like Mother Wei did. She wanted to give when Zhu Mingchu called and asked him to lend him some money to send his brother to the hospital. Zhu Yuanyuan's voice was heard answering the phone. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 794. Zhu Yuanyuan scolded her and hung up the phone. When Wei Rui was sent to the hospital, it took too long and he didn't get the money for surgery in time, so in the end he didn't survive the day. In fact, death would be a relief for him in this situation, but for Wei Bei, she really felt unwilling to do so. She had brought up her younger brother since he was a child, and Wei's mother had never done her best to him. What is a mother's obligation? After she discovered that her son had a problem, she devoted most of her love to others. When Wei Rui died, the most sad and uncomfortable person was Wei Lili. She began to hate the two brothers and sisters of the Zhu family. She attributed her brother's death to the two brothers and sisters of the Zhu family. Since Zhu Mingchu didn't care about her, she began to have an affair with other men outside, hoping to stimulate him in this way, but Zhu Mingchu was about to become a cuckold but didn't know it. He didn't care about Wei Lili at all. He still maintained a relationship with Zhu Yuanyuan as brother and sister on the surface, but in fact they were too close. On the one hand, he blamed Wei Lili for thinking too much and gradually started to develop a crush on her. She began to feel left out, and Wei Lili began to feel desperate. She could not get love, and she also lost family ties. The most important things in her life were suddenly gone, and she began to crazily want money. She no longer works as hard as before in Zhu's company, but is preparing to start her own business. Now that she has the status of Zhu's young mistress, it is easy to break into this circle. As long as she has the capital to know these women, she will have ability can make business happen. After her younger brother Wei Rui died, he lost a lot of money. In addition to giving some money to Wei's mother, Wei Bei saved 100,000 and used his identity as Mrs. Zhu Mingchu to find a bank loan for 300,000. After opening a women's beauty salon, she and the man she dated after marriage were already blatantly living together. Zhu Mingchu didn't notice this until Wei Bei was heartbroken. After deciding to divorce Zhu Mingchu and stay with the person who had been by his side all the way, Zhu Mingchu discovered that Wei Lili, who had always thought that Wen would never leave him, was already with another man. He also liked Lili Wei. It wasn't that he didn't like her at all, otherwise he wouldn't have married her despite his sister's opposition and coquettishness. However, he thought that Wei Bei would stay with him for many years and Zhu Yuanyuan would get married sooner or later, so he became more submissive to her. In addition, he felt a little guilty towards Zhu Yuanyuan. After Zhu Yuanyuan knew that he was not her biological eldest brother, she had feelings for him as between a man and a woman. After all, she is the sister he has always loved, how can Zhu Mingchu bear her sadness? So after spending more time with her, he thought Lili Wei would understand, but he didn't expect Lili Wei to propose a divorce from him. Whether it was the man's self-esteem or some emotional aspects, Zhu Mingchu could not accept Wei Lili's request for divorce, and he flatly rejected Wei Lili. He slapped her in the face and called her shameless. They had been in love for 2 years and married for 3 years, but their relationship had been stagnant. It was not until they were about to divorce that things started to stir up. A fierce quarrel broke out between the couple, and Zhu Mingchu slapped her. Wei Bei then snatched her mobile phone and drove away, and he found the man Wei Bei was dating outside. Use Wei Lili's mobile phone to ask him out. The car hit him and injured him. After the incident, witnesses called the police. The surveillance along that stretch of road captured Zhu Mingchu's car, plus the call he made to the man using Wei Lili's mobile phone. Therefore he was condemned. The Zhu family was rich, and he had entered the house not long ago. Zhu Yuanyuan was so upset that she asked a well-known lawyer friend of hers in Germany to come back and fight the case for him. In the end, with the defense of the lawyer, Zhu Mingchu was sentenced to 1 year in prison and was required to compensate the victim for certain losses. When he came out of prison, he already hated Wei Lili to the core. During this year, Zhu Yuanyuan often went to see him in prison, and the lawyer also fell in love with Zhu Yuanyuan. After there was competition, Zhu Mingchu suddenly found that he loved Zhu Yuanyuan. The reason why he didn't admit it before was just because he hadn't discovered his heart yet. He and Zhu Yuanyuan grew up together. They had the same experience and were like childhood sweethearts. He no longer loves Wei Lili and can no longer lose Zhu Yuanyuan. Therefore, Zhu Mingchu divorced Wei Beihe and got together with Zhu Yuanyuan. But he did not spare Wei Beihe. Wei Beihe had caused him so much misery. If Wei Beihe hadn't been so reckless, how could he have injured that man? He also spent a year in jail. He is the future leader of Zhu's enterprise. To have left such a stain in my life is simply unforgivable. The most important thing is that during the year he was in jail, the Zhu family's stocks plummeted. If it weren't for his parents' support, they would have been on the verge of bankruptcy. Because of his imprisonment, many members of the board of directors withdrew their shares one after another, and the Zhu family suffered a huge loss. Such a blow caused his property to shrink by half in this year, which made him grit his teeth when he thought of Wei Lili. Zhu Mingchu suffered a lot in prison. He was no longer the same person. He used tricks to force Wei Beihe's beauty salon to be unable to continue operating, so he had to transfer it to someone else. He set a trap for Wei's mother, and Wei Lili's mother was a good person, and it was very easy to plot against her. She easily put Wei Lili on the hook for nearly 10 million in debt. When Wei Lili was desperate and was trying to raise money, she was hit and killed by a speeding truck. Wei Beihe's death was actually a relief for her. Wei Mu and Wei Rui were like two mountains weighing heavily on her. She had lived for others almost all her life, and had never lived for herself. One day, but just because of this, she was very unwilling. She was unwilling to be unable to save her brother's death. She was also unwilling to accept that Zhu Mingchu married her but did not love her. The original owner only knew that she was very unwilling, but how to change it? It seemed that Wei Beihe herself was very confused. Her family background and her living habits since childhood made her look strong on the outside and weak on the inside. She seemed to be a very strong person, but in fact she concealed with a fragile soul. She didn't know what to do. She used her soul as a price in exchange for the opportunity to let Lili do the task, but she didn't seem to know what she should do. This is not the first time this has happened. This kind of not knowing what to do is often the task that Lili dislikes the most. After Lili received the plot, she couldn't help but wipe her face. She moved her legs. Her legs were slightly numb from sitting for a long time. She got up and turned on the faucet. The mirror in front of the bathtub reflected her somewhat cold yet beautiful face. In the plot, Lili Wei just and after Zhu Mingchui got married, Zhu Yuanyuan found that she had no way to resist, so she began to give up on herself and wanted to attract Zhu Mingchui's attention. She made a bunch of friends every day and went out to nightclubs to play and drink. Once it was 11 or 12 o'clock, he would drunkenly call Zhu Mingchui again and ask him to pick it up. Zhu Mingchui almost always responded to his request. Especially after Zhu Yuanyuan became more aggressive recently, Wei Beihe had some opinions on this, which indirectly affected her. The relationship between two people. The newlyweds did not enjoy the sweetness of marriage. Even on their wedding night, Zhu Mingchu went to the bar to bring back Zhu Yuanyuan, who was unconscious after drinking. In the end, in order not to wake up Wei Lili, he rested in the study. But he didn't know that Wei Beihe had stayed up all night with his eyes open. Before the marriage, she could still endure it, but after they got married, the relationship between Zhu Yuanyuan and Zhu Mingchui was still the same. Wei Lili began to feel that she couldn't bear it, so she complained to him in private. Zhu Mingchu thought that Wei Lili she was so ignorant that she had to pay more attention to him every time when he wanted to pick up his sister. Wei Bei felt that she had endured all these years and was secretly angry with Zhu Yuanyuan. Zhu Yuanyuan even laughed at her when the sparrow finally flew up the branch. When the toad also ate the swan meat, he could only grit his teeth and smile as if he didn't hear it. After enduring it for so long, he felt that it was not worth it. He finally married in and got the title of Mrs. Zhu. But Wei Lily found that her relationship with Zhu Mingchu had not changed at all. After all her efforts, she did not get the man Zhu Mingchu, but only the name of Mrs. Zhu. The relationship between the two has been tense these past 2 days, but Wei Lily is unwilling to give in. She has paid so much and really doesn't want to fall short when she first married into the Zhu family, so she has been forcing herself to endure it. Zhu Mingchu originally wanted to repair the relationship with her tonight. Zhu Mingchu also put a lot of thought into it. In order to make her happy, he even ordered champagne and roses. It was already the 8th day of their wedding, but since their wedding, after Zhu Mingchu left her and ran out to pick up Zhu Yuanyuan, he came back and slept in the study. Wei Bei finally couldn't bear it anymore and had a big quarrel with him. The two people who were supposed to be in love during the wedding fell into a cold war. Today Zhu Mingchu broke the ice, and Wei Bei also deliberately cooperated. After the two drank wine and took a bath, they took off their clothes and rolled into a ball. When they were about to get to the point, the matter was only halfway done. Zhu Mingchu's phone rang again and it was Zhu Yuanyuan. She seemed to be surrounded by people in the bar. In a hurry, she borrowed a friend's phone to call Zhu Mingchu and asked him to pick her up. For newlyweds, even when Zhu Mingqi received a call from Zhu Yuanyuan in the middle of doing such a thing, he had to leave. Wei Lily couldn't help but become speechless. She could feel the remaining feelings in Wei Lily's heart at this time, and also it was precisely because of Zhu Mingchu's repeated behaviors that Wei Bei became more and more dissatisfied with him, so much so that even seeing him later became annoying. After staying in the bathroom for a long time, Lily took off her bathrobe and took a hot shower, and then returned to the room. Time passed by, but Zhu Mingchu didn't even call back, and Lily didn't even call back. She was not the original owner, so naturally she would not open her eyes wide and unable to wait for him. She got up and practiced her physical skills for a while. After completing a set of physical skills, the clock hand in the room pointed to almost 4 o'clock in the morning, and she straightened up. A body covered in sweat. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 795. There were subtle footsteps outside, as if someone was coming upstairs, and getting closer and closer to the room. Lily wiped the sweat off her body with a handkerchief, then lay on the bed and tried to adjust her breathing. There was a gentle knock on the door, and Zhu Mingchen's gentle and low voice rang. "Lily, are you asleep?" At this moment, he is actually not the Zhu Mingchu who changed his temperament after being imprisoned. He is actually gentle and charming, otherwise Zhu Yuanyuan would not know that he is her brother, and would fall in love with him desperately. Wei Bei was also attracted by his gentleness at first. At that time, she thought that after she had a younger brother and mother to take care of, she originally thought that Zhu Mingchu would be hers. Relying on it, she didn't realize she was wrong until later. There is indeed something wrong with Yuanyuan tonight. She was drunk and got into a fight with someone. Fortunately, I left quickly, otherwise she might have been injured. He gently explained to Lily the reason why he went out tonight. She thought that Zhu Yuanyuan might be hurt, but never thought that his wife might be hurt. Lily suddenly felt like laughing. She curled her lips and didn't make a sound, just listened quietly. I sent 2 of her injured friends to the hospital, so I came back late. After Zhu Mingchu finished speaking, he paused, and after a long while he sighed, "I know you are angry with me. That's right, but I just hope that you can understand Yuanyuan better. She is still young, she is rebellious, and her parents are abroad. As the eldest brother, I will inevitably have to pay more attention to her. You marry me, She is also your sister, I hope you love which I will. Be more tolerant to her and stop fighting with her. After Zhu's father and mother attended their son's wedding a few days ago, they went abroad for another honeymoon. This old couple is so loving. However, the newlyweds Zhu Mingchu and Wei Beihe were extremely cold. In the plot, after today's incident, Zhu Mingchu came back to explain to the original owner, but his explanation did not gain Wei Lily's understanding. Instead, she cried all night. Lily didn't say anything at the moment. Someone outside knocked on the door again. Calm down, I'll go to the study to sleep first. After saying that, the knocking on the door stopped, there was no sound of talking outside, the footsteps slowly faded away, and soon the silence returned. Lily got up from the bed. After another round of physical training, it was already getting bright outside. Everyone in the Zhu family probably knew that she would be in a bad mood, so no servants came over to ask her to have breakfast. Lily practiced physical training all night, and the effect was yes, but because I just started practicing. She was still a little tired after not sleeping all night. She took a shower and went to bed and fell asleep. When she woke up, it was almost noon. After recuperating for a while, she seemed to be in much better spirits. When she went downstairs, it was deserted. Zhu Mingchu is also at home. He is currently in the wedding period. If there is nothing important in the company, he can go to the company later in the past half month. See the lilies coming down. He nodded at Lily. His expression looked very calm, not haggard at all, and his eyes were gentle and bright. Sister-in-law Wang made soup today, please drink a bowl to replenish yourself first. He hadn't finished speaking yet. The door of another room on the second floor that was originally closed was suddenly opened, revealing Zhu Yuan's obviously hungover face. Her hair was messy, covering most of her face. She was wearing a large nightgown and a pair of flip-flops on her feet. She closed the door with her backhand and ran downstairs with a bang. Zhu Mingchui, you are too partial. If you have delicious food, you don't call me, so I will ignore you. Zhu Yuan used to call Zhu Mingchui his eldest brother, but as he later interacted with Wei Lily, she gradually started calling Zhu Mingchuan's name angrily, as if calling him by his name instead of calling him brother would remind him that she was a woman and not his biological sister. Zhu Mingqiu had a look of helplessness on his face and shook his head. You slept so late last night, I thought you couldn't get up. If I had known you were so greedy, I must have called you. Humph. That's more like it. Zhu Yuan wrinkled her nose when she heard this, leaned towards Zhu Mingchui, and reached out to hold one of his arms. Zhu Mingchui was still arranging her messy long hair with his hands. She turned her head and stared at Lily proudly, her big round eyes full of provocation. Lily watched the close interaction between the brother and sister without making a sound. Just because she didn't speak, it didn't mean that Zhu Yuan would let her go. Half of her body was nestled in Zhu Mingchui's arms. Lily pulled up a chair and sat at the dining table. Then he looked at Lily up and down like he was disgusted. Wei Beihe, it's okay that you couldn't change your poor and sour attitude before. Now that you've joined our Zhu family, why are you still like this? You're dressed in an old-fashioned way, a black shirt with a silver-gray skirt, and you're going to wear red high-heeled shoes. You should take more etiquette classes and ask the etiquette teacher to teach you more, so as not to disgrace our Zhu family when you go out in the future. After she finished speaking, she laughed twice and turned to look at Zhu Mingchu, said coquettishly, Zhu Mingchu, am I wrong? I did it for her own good, so that she can dress better so that I can go out in the future without losing your face. Today, Lily is wearing a simple and low-key outfit, but the pair of red stilettos she chose to wear are very enchanting. This bright color instantly adds the finishing touch to her otherwise heavy outfit, making her very feminine. Her long hair was simply tied up, and she didn't wear any jewelry. However, Wei Lily's good looks have already surpassed many jewelry and diamonds. She is tall and thin, with straight and slender legs. Her A-line skirt makes her waist thin. She had long legs and narrow hips, and the red stilettos were twisted in her hands. When she first came downstairs, Zhu Mingchu looked at her several times, but now Zhu Yuanyuan started to sneer at her. If the original owner in the past heard this, she would not be able to bear it. Her birth background will always be a pain in the heart of the original owner. She was not born well, and when she started dating Zhu Mingchu, she really had some intention of marrying a rich man, just because on this point, she was ridiculed countless times by Zhu Yuanyuan after dating Zhu Mingchu. The Zhu family's parents originally did not want to care about the marriage between their children, but after hearing Zhu Yuanyuan's words too many times, they would inevitably think that Wei Beihe, the daughter-in-law, was marrying. She entered the Zhu family for the money of the Zhu family and was lukewarm towards her. Shortly after the two got married, she had no intention of introducing relatives of the Zhu family to Wei Lili, and she did not arrange for Zhu Mingchui to take Wei Lili out in the company. During the wedding trip and honeymoon, he ran away instead, which was also an unsolvable knot in Lily's heart after getting married. You'd better take a look at yourself first. You ran downstairs without combing your hair or washing your face, brushing your teeth or changing your pajamas. You are already quite old, but your mind is still in childhood, but your body obviously not, that is, you are so casual at home. If the young lady of the Zhu family is as virtuous as you when away from home, it will really make people laugh at you. People from your background are even worse than me, a person from a humble background. Now, I think it's you who need the etiquette teacher to teach you, not me. Lily didn't care whether Zhu Mingchui gave her a wink or not. Zhu Yuanyuan used to pretend to be outspoken, and often made Wei Lili unable to get off the stage when she spoke. Sometimes Wei Lili he was so angry that he was trembling all over. What she said was not a big deal, just a disgusting little thing. To argue with her would seem like he was making a fuss out of a molehill, and would also make Zhu Mingchao unhappy. But if he didn't argue with her, even if she was so angry that her heart ached, she would laugh so hard that she would be so happy. When it comes to talking, no matter how sharp-tongued Zhu Yuanyuan is, 10 of her may not be able to match Lily. Since she said trivial things are disgusting, Lily naturally responded to her like this: what's more, as you said, we are too poor to afford an etiquette teacher, but if you are rich, you can hire more. After Lily said this, Mrs. Wang had already brought the stewed soup up, and when she saw the scene here, she was about to put the soup on Lily. He quickly stepped back, but Zhu Yuanyuan was so angry that she sat upright, stretched out her hand and patted the dining table. Bring it to me. She is the eldest daughter of the Zhu family and has always been favored. Even though Zhu Mingchu ordered the soup for Lily first, but now Zhu Yuanyuan wanted to drink it, sister-in-law Wang naturally brought it to Zhu Yuanyuan without hesitation and turned her head. He glanced at Lily awkwardly. Miss Wei, I'll get you another bowl. Zhu Yuanyuan sneered and stared at Lily. She took a spoon and scooped the soup. She didn't drink it, but stared at Lily with provocative eyes. Lily was not angry and nodded to Mrs. Wang. Then she glanced at Zhu Yuanyuan. She wearing a loose nightgown, a pair of white and tender legs were dangling under the chair. She dropped the flip-flops to the ground, revealing 10 tender toes. It's not that I, the sister-in-law, like to talk about you, it's just that Zhu Yuanyuan, you seem to be a little fat. You should find a nutritionist to take care of your body. If you drink too much greasy soup, you will gain weight. After all, you are not married yet. I am also thinking about you. Don't be angry because of my blunt words. Lily imitated Zhu Yuanyuan's tone, making Zhu Yuanyuan so angry that her face turned ugly, and she stood up. I won't eat it yet. I'm a little tired of seeing it. I'm going to the company first. After saying that, Lily stood up without looking at Zhu Mingchu. She put on her high heels and went out. Suddenly there was the sound of a bowl falling to the ground and breaking into pieces. Zhu Yuanyuan shouted with a crying voice. I won't eat. Zhu Mingchu, do you think I'm fat too? I'll lose weight, and I'll show it to you. I'll starve myself to death. It makes you feel bad. Zhu Mingchu coaxed her warmly. Her tone was a little helpless. Lily didn't listen to the rest of the words. She walked towards the garage, where there were 7 luxury cars side by side. A grey Volkswagen Popo was parked in a corner, with a layer of dust already accumulated on it. She stretched out her hand after rummaging around in the bag for the car keys. Lily couldn't find them at first, so she simply poured everything out of the bag, only to see the car keys mixed in a small wallet. She took out the car keys and just put other things into her bag. Before she unlocked the car, 2 sets of hurried footsteps rang in this direction, and Zhu Yuanyuan shouted in a crying voice. Go faster, don't let her drive my car away. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 796. While Zhu Yuanyuan was shouting, the sound of tap-tat-tat footsteps started to sound. The 2 people ran closer and closer. Soon, the 2 figures crossed over a large bush of plants and appeared at the door of the garage. Zhu Mingchuo looked helpless. There was a bit of pampering and a bit of tolerance in those gentle eyes. Zhu Yuanyuan put her arm on his arm and shook his hand. When she saw the car key in Lily's hand, she couldn't help but he stamped his feet and shouted. Wei Bei, how dare you drive my car? The car she was referring to was a red BMW, one of the 7 luxury cars parked in the garage. After Wei Lily confirmed her relationship with Zhu Mingchu, Zhu Yuanyuan's constant cynicism caused the 2 to have a difficult time in their relationship. Among them, almost all expenses are A-based. Zhu Mingchu has had girlfriends before, but because of the existence of Zhu Yuanyuan, many of those women gave up. There is a sister-in-law like Zhu Yuanyuan who will be difficult to deal with in the future. Many people backed down. They were only interested in Zhu Mingchu's money and not in him as a person, because these people could not be called in love with Zhu Mingchu, and they had never thought about marrying him. So everyone gets what they need, and when you spend Zhu Mingchuo's money, you don't need to care about Zhu Yuanyuan's opinion. It's not as shabby as Wei Lily was in the years of dating Zhu Mingchuo. Zhu Mingchuo didn't say it, but he knew it in his heart, so after the 2 were ready to get married, he paid more than 1 million in full to buy Wei Lily a red BMW as their wedding anniversary. The gift was given to her and recorded in her name. Logically speaking, a car worth more than 1 million yuan may be very expensive to ordinary people, but for the Zhu family, several cars in the garage have exceeded 5 million yuan. This BMW is not noteworthy. After Zhu Yuanyuan returned from studying in Germany, in order to celebrate her graduation, Zhu's mother even bought her a sports car worth more than 3 million yuan. But Zhu Yuanyuan didn't take a fancy to other cars. Instead, she only took a fancy to Wei Lily's red BMW, and she often rushed to drive it. Because of this matter, Wei Bei and Zhu Yuanyuan had several unpleasant quarrels. Even because of this car, the originally discordant relationship between the 2 became even more tense. Zhu Mingchu was caught in a dilemma. He had his sister on one side and his wife on the other, and the palms and backs of his hands were full of flesh. He could only persuade Wei Lily was more patient. Zhu Yuanyuan was not bad at driving, and Wei Lily could vaguely feel this. She just wanted to grab something from her hands. At that time, Wei Bei thought that Zhu Yuanyuan looked down on her origin. It was not until later that she discovered that Zhu Yuanyuan and Zhu Mingchui were not biological siblings. After discovering that Zhu Yuanyuan liked Zhu Mingchui, and finally realized that Zhu Yuanyuan liked this red BMW not simply because she wanted to steal her own things. Just because this car was a gift from Zhu Mingchui to his new wife. For Zhu Yuanyuan, this means something different. She knows that Zhu Mingchui is not marrying her, so she wants to prove her little thought by grabbing the BMW. It seems that if she grabs the BMW, she can grab it. Zhu Mingchu's love is like a gift from him to his wife. Your car? Which one is your car? Can you name it? Lily had no intention of driving that red BMW today. Lily was so angry that she would always compete with Zhu Yuanyuan, but then Wei Bei was just unwilling to give in. In addition, she still has Zhu Mingchu in her heart. That's why she was fighting with Zhu Mingqi. Now that the original owner was gone, Lily had no feelings for Zhu Mingqi, and she didn't want to argue with Zhu Yuanyuan over a red BMW. So early in the morning, I was planning to drive the second-hand car that the original owner had bought with a loan, but now I heard Zhu Yuanyuan's tone. But she couldn't help laughing. The red BMW was delivered half a month ago. Although it was in Wei Bei's name, Zhu Yuanyuan was driving it almost every day. The original owner had been swallowing his anger. Zhu Mingqi's attitude towards persuading Wei Lily to be patient was also the original owner's attitude towards it. One of the reasons why he later gave up and fell in love with someone else. Okay Lily, Yuanyuan is still young, can you stop arguing with her? Early in the morning, the two started fighting again. Zhu Yuanyuan just lost her temper over the soup. After a while, they had another quarrel about the car, and there was no peace at home. Zhu Mingchu could hardly enjoy the joy of being newlywed. Frankly speaking, he also knew that Zhu Yuanyuan did something wrong in some places, but Zhu Yuanyuan lost her parents when she was a child and was adopted into the Zhu family. The Zhu family had no daughters, so everyone doted on her. In addition, they pitied her for being abandoned since she was a child, and everyone was used to it. In order to pamper her and let her go, Zhu Mingchu guessed that the reason why she had such a big opinion against Wei Bei was that she knew her life experience and was afraid that she would be less favored after marrying her daughter-in-law. From now on, he will live with Wei Lily for the rest of his life. He has time to compensate Wei Lily, but Zhu Yuanyuan will get married sooner or later. What's more, Zhu Mingchu can vaguely feel that she treats him differently, but he can't reciprocate. She, therefore, feels particularly guilty towards her. During this period, she has pampered her a bit too much. But now that Zhu Yuanyuan is already 25, how many years can she get married? Will not all his time belong to Wei Lily then? Thinking of this, Zhu Mingchu inevitably felt a little tired. He stretched out his hand and rubbed his forehead. Just as he was about to speak again, Lily stuffed the car keys into her bag. Actually, I wanted to drive my own car. The company, but I'm a little unhappy with Zhu Yuanyuan's current behavior. After all, this car was a wedding gift you bought for me. So I have changed my mind now. I insist on driving this car. Zhu Yuanyuan handed over the key. As she spoke, she extended her hands to Zhu Yuanyuan. When Zhu Yuanyuan heard what she said, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She put her hands on Zhu Mingchu's shoulders and laughed so hard that her body shook. My eldest brother, the car I bought with my money can be driven by whoever wants to drive it, why should I give it to you? My name is written on the car, not Zhu Mingchu. Seeing her expression, Lily was not angry. If you don't want to return my car, either you have to pay me back, or Zhu Mingchu, you will have to pick me up and drop me off every day in the future. Why? Zhu Mingchu didn't react when he heard this, but Zhu Yuanyuan jumped up. Don't pick her up. She pulled Zhu Mingchu's arm and kept shaking it, pouting and acting coquettishly while shaking it. If you pick her up, I will ignore you from now on. I will go back to Germany and never come back. It would be fine if she didn't know the inside story. Now she knew that Zhu Yuanyuan was not the Zhu family's biological child. When she heard her say such words, Lily really looked down on her in her heart. She ate Zhu family's food and drank Zhu family's food. Even when she grew up, the Zhu family spent a lot of money to send her to study abroad. But now they are threatening the Zhu family. She will never come back to China again. If the Zhu family doesn't support her, still, what ability can she use to not come back? This kind of thoughtless words happened to be experienced by the Zhu family. Lily turned her head away. When Zhu Mingzi heard what Zhu Yuanyuan said, he felt a little helpless. He patted her arm and coaxed her, "Okay, okay. Now, you go back first. I have something to say to Lily, stop making trouble. Don't mention going back to Germany again, otherwise your parents will find you abroad when they come back, and they will miss you so much." Zhu Yuanyuan seemed to have won. She bit her lip and wrinkled her nose and laughed. "If you have anything to say, say it now." In front of me she was quite jealous. At this moment, Zhu Mingchui said that he wanted to talk to Lily alone, but she refused, fearing that they would leave her. Her eyes became intimate again, a pair of eyes staring directly at Lily, guarding her like a thief. When Lily saw her like this, she couldn't help but laugh. "In front of you? I'll follow you tonight. Zhu Mingchu wants to have sex, should he do it in front of you?" "Okay." Zhu Mingqiu's face suddenly turned red and he glared at Lily. "That's outrageous. What nonsense are you talking about in front of Yuan Yuan?" Lily raised the corners of her mouth and looked at Zhu Mingchui's blushing face and thick neck, but said nothing. Zhu Yuanyuan's eye circles suddenly turned red. She bit her lips and glanced at Zhu Mingchui. After a long while, she held him in her arms. He let go of his hand on his arm, turned around suddenly, twisted his skirt and ran away. Yuan Yuan. Seeing her running away, and thinking of his sister's look about to cry just now, Zhu Mingqi rubbed his brows tiredly. He originally wanted to catch up, but in the end he stopped and sighed. "Wait for me first. I'll go to the company with you later. I have something to tell you." He looked a little serious. It was obvious that Lily's behavior of talking back to Zhu Yuanyuan just now made him feel a little unhappy. After the instructions, Zhu Mingchu then turned around and chased after him. Lily originally didn't want to pay attention to him and drove away, but after thinking about it, she stood in the garage and waited. She didn't care about Zhu Mingchu, but she was willing to piss Zhu Yuanyuan to death. Zhu Yuanyuan she refused to let Zhu Mingchui see her off, so she insisted on riding in the same car with Zhu Mingchui. This was considered as a way of expelling the cowardice she had suffered from Zhu Yuanyuan before for the original owner. What's more, Lily also had something to say to Zhu Mingchui. She waited in the garage for a while, and Zhu Mingchui came over more than a quarter of an hour later. He changed his clothes and was only wearing a shirt. His suit jacket was hung between his arms. After being out for such a long time, apart from changing clothes, he had obviously comforted Zhu Yuanyuan. After not sleeping for a few hours last night, Zhu Mingchuan's handsome face showed a look of exhaustion. He started the car, turned around to see Lily fastening her seat belt, and stopped what she was doing with some annoyance. "Action! I have something to talk to you about. Yuanyuan is not very old. She is my sister after all. Can't you let her go?" It had only been a few days since the wedding, but Zhu Mingchu had not tasted the joy of being married. He began to feel a little tired. He was sandwiched between two women, coaxing the left and coaxing the right. He also had company matters to deal with. As time went by, he became a little irritable. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 797. Zhu Mingyuan understands Zhu Yuanyuan's character. She has been an unruly and willful master since she was a child. She has been pampered since she was a child and has never refused to admit defeat. Wei Lily has always been sensible, so he is going to talk to Lily and see her. Can you please restrain yourself a little and stop making a fuss with Zhu Yuanyuan all day long? Don't make trouble with her again. It won't be easy to explain to your parents when they come back. After Zhu Mingchui finished speaking, he saw from the corner of his eye that Lily had fastened her seat belt, and then he started the car again. After the car backed out of the garage, he turned his head, stepped on the accelerator and drove out. The villa complex where Zhu's family was located was on a hilltop in the suburbs. Before going down the mountain, he had been thinking about how to discuss with Lily to calm her down. At least he didn't want something like this to happen again this morning. He didn't say much, but he defended Zhu Yuanyuan everywhere. Lily faced the window, watching the scenery passing by. Sometimes when passing by the shade of greenery, her calm face was reflected in the window. As long as Zhu Yuanyuan doesn't provoke me, I will naturally not have a conflict with her, but if Zhu Yuanyuan wants to provoke her, Lily will naturally not swallow her anger. Zhu Mingchuo heard the meaning of her words and his expression was a little ugly. He thought for a moment, and then turned his head. Lily looked at his face reflected in the window. He looked a little melancholy and said softly, "Otherwise, you should go back to your previous rental for the next 2 days. Let's live in the house for 2 days, since the rent for that house has been paid for a year anyway." If the original owner heard this, I'm afraid he would be really angry to death. Just a few days after the wedding, his husband asked him to go back to his original rental house to stay for a few days. This is no different from being kicked back to his parents' house in disguise. It is estimated that Lily Wei in the plot had already guessed that Zhu Mingchu might say this, so she was very unhappy even during the wedding period. She didn't have a stable life when she was a child. When she grew up, she continued to devote herself to Wei's mother and Wei Rui. When she became an adult, she was so patient in order to be with Zhu Mingchui. She never enjoyed the feeling of being cared for. She originally thought that the situation would change after getting married. She originally thought that Zhu Mingchu would be more attracted to her since she became an outsider and became Zhu Mingchu's inner. However, she did not expect that it turned out to be worse than she imagined. "Okay. I won't go back today. You can pack my things for me. I think our marriage seems to be a mistake. Everyone can calm down for a while. I will go to the company today to settle the financial affairs." Zhu Mingchu wanted to drive her away, but Lily didn't bother to go back at all. When she finished saying this, her expression did not change. Zhu Mingchu, who was driving the car, heard her say this and stepped on it. When the brakes were applied, the car's tires made a screeching sound as they rubbed against the ground. The car dragged on the ground for a while, and the two people's bodies were pulled forward by the inertia, and then bounced back to the chair by the seat belt. His expression was very ugly, his chest kept heaving, and he shouted loudly, "Nonsense! We've only been married for a few days, so why are you talking about divorce? My sister is also your sister. Just because you had a few quarrels with her and I advised you, sister-in-law, to be patient, you said you wanted a divorce." Zhu Mingchu really didn't expect that Wei Bei had always been obedient to him. A woman would file for divorce a few days after getting married. He guessed that Lily was angry about what happened last night. He saw that Wei Lily and Zhu Yuanyuan were not talking to each other these days, and Zhu Mingchui knew it in his heart. Zhu Yuanyuan's behavior sometimes went too far, so he deliberately made up for her last night. What's more, the newlyweds were already very affectionate, so he specially arranged a little mood last night. Everyone was happy at first. In the end, no one expected that Zhu Yuanyuan would call back and ask him to pick it up halfway through the sex. On one side, it was his sister who caused trouble, and on the other side, it was his daughter-in-law. He could do such a thing any day in the future. Zhu Mingchui thought that the worst he could do was make amends with her in the future. In comparison, if something happened to Zhu Yuanyuan, it would be much more troublesome, so he left at that time. He also guessed that Wei Lily might be angry. But I didn't expect Lily to file for divorce. Is it because of what happened last night? I have already explained what happened last night to you. I know, Zhu Yuanyuan has caused trouble. Lily looked at Zhu Mingchui's somewhat irritable face on the glass window, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, her eyes drooped. Zhu Mingchui reached out and wiped his hair. Now that you know it, why do you say such things again?" "I just said that I know, I didn't say that I have to endure her rather than a long-term pain, it is better to have a short-term pain. Lily also doesn't want to quarrel with Zhu Yuanyuan all the time. If Zhu Mingchu is worthy of the original owner, that's fine. At present, it seems if he defends Zhu Yuanyuan like this, why should she stay here for the rest of her life? The original owner wasted several years in his previous life to understand this problem. The deeper he fell into, the harder it was to get out. The longer way Lily was dragged on, the more unwilling she became. Until later, when she woke up, it was already too late. Although she herself didn't know what her wish was, Lily cut the knot quickly for her. After she said she wanted a divorce, she had already made this decision in her heart. You have also seen the relationship between your sister and me. You also know how I treated her in the past. Zhu Yuanyuan likes Zhu Mingqi. They both know this, but Wei Bei he used to think that they were two siblings. So I just think that Zhu Yuanyuan is just a special brother-in-law. How can I think of anything else? Before she got married, she had tried to please Zhu Yuanyuan, but as love rivals, they were incompatible with each other. The only way she could please Zhu Yuanyuan was that she took the initiative to leave Zhu Mingchui. Now Zhu Mingchui, it's obviously impossible to ask Lily to tolerate it alone. A person's tolerance is inherently limited, not to mention that Lily has never thought about enduring her. As long as you endure it for a while longer. Speaking of this, Zhu Mingkai himself felt a little guilty. He knew that Zhu Yuanyuan was indeed willful, but he had no choice. Apart from asking Lily to endure it, he really couldn't think of anything else. After saying a few other words, seeing that Lily was silent, Zhu Mingchu breathed a sigh of relief, as if she had already figured it out and calmed down. Don't talk about divorce in the future. Although our Zhu family, we're not from a wealthy family, but we can't afford to be embarrassed if we get divorced just after we got married. Your mother is quite old, so you have to think about her, right? As soon as Zhu Mingchu finished speaking, his heart suddenly moved. Mother Wei was the most soft-hearted, and Lily Wei always took good care of her family. He talked too much, so it would be better to ask Mother Wei to say a few more nice words for him behind his back. Maybe Lily, you can figure it out. You are temporarily staying in a rental house for the next 2 days. I will pick you up in 2 days. Be good. After he finished speaking, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He reached out and touched Lily's hair. He exerted a slight force on his palm, trying to pull it away. She turned her head to kiss her face, but Lily turned her head to avoid it. Zhu Mingkai was really surprised when he saw her cold face. In the past, he took the initiative to leave Wei Lily when he was being intimate because of Zhu Yuanyuan's affairs. But the time for the original owner to reject him was almost non-existent in the past few years. Unexpectedly, Lily would not even want to touch him now. Could it be that she really wanted to divorce him? Thinking of this, Zhu Mingkai's expression became a little ugly. He restarted the car and drove back to the company without talking. What Zhu Mingchu said in the car was a joke, but Lily didn't want to give him a joke. In Zhu's company, everyone thought she was the future head wife of the Zhu family and thought she was beautiful. Incomparable, but in fact, following Zhu Mingchu and handling all the big and small things for him, Wei Bei he put in a lot of effort, and her income was not even as good as in the original company. In addition to the nice name of MRS Zhu, there were no real benefits, so that after working at Zhu's for a period of time, when Wei Rui finally fell ill, she couldn't even get the money out and had to ask Zhu Mingchu for it. In the end, she was ridiculed by Zhu Yuanyuan. He went back to the company to submit his resignation first. Zhu Mingchu had a meeting at the company for half a day in the afternoon, so he probably didn't see the resignation letter she handed in at the first time, but he didn't bother her. He even drove her to her after get off work in the evening. When they arrived at the house that Wei Lily rented before her marriage, Zhu Mingchu remembered what happened this morning and deliberately wanted to appease Lily. What do you want for dinner? I'll stay here later and won't go back. If he hadn't entered Wei Beihe's body to complete the task, it would have been ridiculous for the couple, who seemed normal to outsiders, to be so secretive. However, Zhu Mingchu didn't seem to notice anything wrong. I still want to reach out and pull Lily. He is also a man of normal age, and Wei Beihe has a good body and appearance. They don't spend much time alone together after their wedding. In this regard, Zhu Mingchu is actually hungry all the time, and he can't stand it. If Zhu Yuanyuan was not his sister, I am afraid he would also be angry. Now thinking of the unfinished things last night, desire appeared in his eyes. Lily pursed her lips, her eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and before he could refuse, Zhu Mingchu's phone rang. Now she didn't have to worry about excuses anymore. The call was from Zhu Yuanyuan. She checked Zhu Mingchui very strictly. Zhu Mingchui said a few words on the other end of the phone. When he hung up the phone and turned around, his expression was a little embarrassed. He stood up and said, "I may not be able to do it tonight." Seeing that he still wanted to explain, Lily sneered, and then her cell phone rang. She interrupted Zhu Mingchu's words with a gesture, and took her cell phone out of her bag. The number was called by Mother Wei. Her voice on the other end of the phone was filled with humility and flattery. "Ziahe, your brother is missing." To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 798. Wei Rui's illness was discovered not long after he was born. Although Wei Beihe later worked hard to earn money and hired the best doctors to treat her brother and used the best medicine, it was delayed a few years ago. When Wei Rui grew up, his upper body, the condition of his lower body is obviously more serious than that of his lower body. Sometimes he is speechless and his intelligence is relatively low. Although he is not the type who is completely paralyzed on the bed, he is not much better. Wei Beihe used to carry him on his back. He took him wherever he went. After he went to college and was busy with studies, the first thing he did when he started working was to buy him a wheelchair. There were people pushing him wherever he went. Logically speaking, Wei Rui should not be in a situation like this. Possibly missing, because if there is no one to push the wheelchair, the possibility that he can push it alone is extremely low. At this moment, Mother Wei said that Wei Rui was missing. There were 3 caregivers hired by Wei Beihe to take turns taking care of him 24 hours a day. But Mother Wei couldn't keep track of him. Could it be that 3 caregivers weren't enough? Lily hung up the phone. Zhu Mingqiu on the other end saw that her expression was a little cold. He hesitated for a long time before asking, "Is something okay? Do you want me to drive you off?" Although he said he wanted to see Lily off, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw Lily unbuckle her seat belt. Zhu Yuanyuan forced him to go back within half an hour. Otherwise, she would have to book a flight back to Germany soon. If she really left, Father Zhu and Mother Zhu would come back from their honeymoon and find that their daughter who had finally returned to China had gone abroad again, and they would probably miss her again. He was anxious to leave, but he knew that Lily had not driven out. The car he gave her half a month ago was taken away by Zhu Yuanyuan this morning. But in fact, Zhu Yuanyuan has been staying at home since graduation, and the BMW has hardly been driven. Pass. I spent most of the time calling him and asking him to pick her up. Zhu Yuanyuan played too much yesterday and it was almost dawn when she came back. Coupled with the influence of the hangover, although she got up privately at noon because she was afraid of Lily and Zhu Mingchui, she went back to her room to sleep for a long time after Zhu Mingchui left home, and she even grabbed the red BMW. Not open. On the contrary, Lily was obviously in trouble at this moment, and there was no car available. Thinking of this, Zhu Mingchu also felt vaguely guilty. At this moment, if he saw Lily taking a taxi and leaving by herself, he would feel something was wrong. But if he wanted to see her off, he would obviously not be able to go back within half an hour. Zhu Yuan's character has always been able to do it since she was a child. Do what you say, if you really leave. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to coax her to come back. Can you give me a gift? Lily did not comfort Zhu Mingchu in an empathetic way. Instead, she asked him with a sneer. Zhu Mingchu really couldn't give her a gift. Time was a bit tight now. The rush hour after get off work in the evening was already over. It's easy to get stuck in traffic, and he has to go out of the city to go up the mountain. It's too late to turn back, and the little ancestor doesn't know how to make a fuss. He just said that just to save face, but he didn't expect Lily to be so unscrupulous. Zhu Mingchu suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He thought that he had promised her to have dinner with her and spend the night with her before, so he said it now. Before his words turned cold, the man changed his mind. He guessed that Lily was just angry because he broke his promise, so Yang said. Don't be angry, be good, my husband will come over to accompany you tomorrow. He would say the same thing to Wei Lily every time. But the result is the same every time. Lily smiled and pulled up her skirt. I don't need you to accompany me, but you have to send me my clothes and toiletries. Zhu Mingchun was deeply afraid that she would make trouble, but he didn't expect that she would just ask him to deliver something. He didn't seem to be angry, so he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Nodding repeatedly, he didn't dare to ask Lily who made the call just now and what happened. He was afraid that if he asked, he would never be able to get away. After telling her to be careful, Zhu Mingqiu looked at her. After getting out of the car, the phone rang again. Before he could tell Lily to be careful, he saw that she was already standing on the roadside, preparing to hail a taxi. There was a strange feeling on her back that he couldn't explain. It was no longer the same as before. The feeling that he could reach out and take her into his arms seemed to be getting further and further away. Zhu Mingchui shook his head and quickly stepped on the accelerator. When they took a taxi and arrived at Wei's house, it was not yet 7 o'clock. Lily had already called the police while she was on the road. The police had already come to the door before she arrived. After Wei Bei he went to work, although the family's finances became more relaxed. No matter how much Wei Bei he could make money, he could not match Wei's mother's prodigal hand. The family's life was still tight. How many days did Wei Bei he work? Years ago, she could hardly save any money, so the place she rented for Wei Mu and others was a 3-bedroom house, which was now filled with recycled mineral water bottles and some saleable copper and iron pipes. There was a dull smell in the room. The police were giving a statement to Wei Rui's mother. The 3 caregivers were all honest people, sitting next to them with helpless expressions. Although it usually takes 48 hours for a normal person to file a missing person case, Wei Rui was different. He was just a person with no intelligence. As well as the cerebral palsy boy who can take care of himself, he has almost no ability to protect himself if something happens. Lily specially emphasized this point when she reported the crime. In addition, she reported her identity as the wife of the Zhu family, so the police arrived very quickly. When she entered, Mother Wei's eyes flashed with a hint of guilt and embarrassment when she saw her. Her hands were clasped together nervously, and her lips trembled slightly. Being able to give birth to a girl as beautiful as Wei Bei, it is conceivable that Wei's mother's beauty would not have been any worse when she was young, otherwise Wei Rui's father would not have been so fascinated that he was willing to pay off her debt and support her. Although she had lived a difficult life for many years, Mother Wei's face still had an almost otherworldly innocence and a girlish innocence. When she saw Lily's cold face, Mother Wei bit her lips and stood up. Come. Why did Xiao Rui disappear? Lily entered the door and asked directly without finding a place to sit down. When they saw her coming back, the 3 caregivers breathed a sigh of relief. As if they had found their backbone, they all looked towards her. She came closer, and Mother Wei was a little frightened when she saw her daughter. Wei Bei had never been very close to her, and had not relied on her much since she was a child. After giving birth to Wei Rui, Mother Wei always did good deeds and spent all her life on her. When it comes to doing good deeds, she inevitably neglects her son. Wei Bei has no objection to this, so the relationship with her is even colder. Instead, she has surpassed her as a mother and shouldered the responsibility of taking care of Wei Rui. It can be said that Wei Rui has been brought up by Wei Lily since he was a child. Now his son has disappeared, but in front of Lily, Wei's mother inevitably feels a little scared and guilty. Miss Wei, the three caregivers greeted Lily. They were all speechless when they heard her ask. Lily asked again with a cold face, and then one of the women hesitated and said, "We don't know either." "I don't know." Lily originally wanted to ask why her brother disappeared, but she didn't expect to hear this woman say something she didn't know. She couldn't help but ask, and the three of them nodded. A few days ago, Sister Xiaohui brought a group of children to her home. I heard that these children were siblings from a certain mountainous area. The parents at home had too many children and could not support them, so they were not allowed to study. They came to the city to find jobs. As a result, I have no money and live in a rescue station without enough food. She explained a lot in a long way, and Lily became a little impatient. "Tell me the key points." "Sister Xiaohui contacted the parents of this child yesterday and asked us to send them back today. Xiaohui is being taken care of by Sister Xiaohui alone." As these women spoke, their voices became quieter. The three of them were taken away by Wei's mother. No wonder they didn't know where Wei Rui was missing today. After several people finished speaking, they asked with some fear, "Miss Wei, this matter has nothing to do with us. You won't fire us, right?" Wei Bei has never been stingy with people who can take good care of her brother, and is very generous. She pays a lot of money, and when 3 people divide the work a day, it is actually equivalent to just 8 hours of work. Wei Rui can't leave by himself, and she doesn't look at him when she sees him. It doesn't take much effort to get a lot of money in a month. After taking care of Wei Rui for several years, Wei Bei never defaults on every salary payment and has a good temper. If they serve well, they will receive additional red envelopes during the holidays. Several people cherish this job very much and are afraid that Lily will anger them and fire them. "If my brother can't be found, why should I hire a caregiver?" Lily sneered and asked. The women who had thought it was none of their business just now became a little anxious when they heard this. The one whose family conditions were a little more difficult suddenly had red eyes and glanced at Wei's mother. Mother Wei was a soft-hearted person, and she hated to see anyone show up like this in front of her. She couldn't help but advise, "Xiaohui, it's none of their business. I also know that it's none of their business, so I'm not causing trouble for them now that her son has gone." Mother Wei still has time to worry about others, and Lily can't help but feel helpless. She had just said that if Wei Rui couldn't be found, he could no longer work for these people. It didn't mean that they would be held responsible for anything. But Wei's mother hurriedly began to plead for others. She frowned. "Besides, taking care of Wei Rui is their most important responsibility. I paid the wages, and inviting them here is not asking them to take care of other children." Seeing that her expression was not serious at the moment, Mother Wei just pretended that the problem was not that serious. She breathed a sigh of relief involuntarily, smiled and comforted the woman with red eyes. "It's okay, it's okay." The 2 policemen around him were speechless when they heard what she said. "They are fine. I want to ask you, since Wei Rui is the mother and you are taking care of her, why is Wei Rui missing? He couldn't go very far by himself. If no one pushed him, how could he disappear? The Wei family has been renting a house nearby for nearly 5 years. Thanks to Wei's mother's character, no one within 10 miles knows about the Wei family. Lily doesn't believe that Wei Rui would disappear for no reason like this. He just disappeared. As long as people around him see him, they will always say something." To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 799. Mother Wei's expression became a little embarrassed when she heard her asking her question. She glanced at Lily timidly, and then at the policeman beside her. She twisted her hands together for a long time before whispering. The proprietress of the mahjong parlor downstairs next door asked me to babysit the customers' children for her, so I pushed Xiao Rui there. I had been watching him in front of me, but, I don't know when he disappeared. This means that she actually doesn't know when Wei Rui disappeared. Although Wei's mother said that Wei Rui had been missing for 2 hours, the real time was much longer than that. Lily knew the proprietress of the mahjong parlor downstairs next door. This was a private mahjong parlor, and she usually went there. There were many people playing mahjong, and the business was very good. Later, in order to expand the business, the landlady bought the entire first floor of the building next door. The place was bigger, and there were naturally more customers. Sometimes in order to attract business, the landlady would inevitably sometimes I have to look after children for others. Some of the guests are housewives or bring their grandchildren. If you want them to play mahjong, it is inevitable that someone will take care of the children. The employees of the mahjong parlor sometimes help to look after them, but because the business is so busy, well, most of the time it's just too busy. The landlady was reluctant to kick the guests out, so sometimes when there were more children and the Wei family moved in and they became familiar with Wei's mother's character, she would call her to help, and they became familiar with her over time. Mother Wei is a very good person. As long as someone is in trouble, she will definitely help them regardless of whether she has the ability or not after talking to her. From trivial things like raising children for others, to big things like spending money to help. She barely knew how to write the word reject. Seeing that she was easy to handle, the landlady often called her for help. Sometimes the mahjong parlor was too busy. Mother Wei is also asked to help clean the house and serve tea for the guests. Today there are many guests and children, so Mother Wei is very busy. At first, she could still remember her son Wei Rui sunbathing outside, but as time went by, she forgot about it as she became busy. In the evening, everyone went home to prepare dinner. Wei's mother had been busy for a long time, helping clean the mahjong parlor. Only then did she realize that her son, who had been basking in the sun outside, was missing. She searched around but couldn't find it. Mother Wei was so anxious that she had no idea what to do. Just called Lily. Lily was once again lucky that she was no longer the original owner, otherwise if the original owner knew about it, Mother Wei would be pissed to death. How many children did you look after today? Do you know who they are? She didn't care about Mother Wei at this moment. Instead, she asked first. Mother Wei looked a little ugly when she heard what she said. Face. I was deeply afraid that she was looking for trouble with others, so I quickly whispered. Everyone who has nothing to do with them is blaming me. I know it has nothing to do with them. I'm asking you who they are. I'll ask them if they've seen Xiao Rui. Lily interrupted Mother Wei's words and spoke louder. Mother Wei's eyes suddenly filled with circles. She turned red, quietly took out a handkerchief and wiped her tears. She glanced at the police hesitantly, obviously not believing Lily's guarantee. It wasn't until the police started asking her these questions that she turned to these people one by one. The name was spoken. Mother Wei usually helps take care of these children from time to time. She was familiar with most of them. After Lily heard what she said, she motioned for her to go out with her, preparing to go door to door to find these people and ask them if they had seen her brother. That's not good. It's already dinner time now. I disturbed others' dinner. You also know that the family is having dinner. Have you ever thought about what your family is doing? Lily sighed. After asking Wei's mother, she was not like the original owner who always felt filled with anger and couldn't vent it when encountering these things, so she would yell at Wei's mother. Wei's mother had always been afraid of her daughter, and most importantly what's more, she needs her daughter's financial support, and her temper is weak, so she can't stand upright in front of Wei Bei. The whole family can still have dinner together. You don't even know where your son is or whether he can have dinner with you in the future. Why are you worrying about others and interrupting their dinner? Lily asked Wei's mother 2 questions in a row. The direct question left Mother Wei speechless, and started crying. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. I wish I had looked at him more. At this point, she didn't think that she shouldn't help the proprietress of the mahjong parlor. Instead, she thought that she could take care of a bunch of children and Wei Rui at the same time. Lily didn't want to talk to her anymore and forced her to. Mother Wei wrote down all the children she had seen today. She was very dedicated to the affairs of other people's families. She knew every child's name clearly, but she was the only one who didn't care about her own son. She couldn't be trusted. Lily didn't want to hear Mother Wei chirping at the same time while looking for someone, so she took the 2 policemen and went to the house of the mahjong parlor proprietress. To Lily's surprise, the landlady was obviously a little panicked when she saw the 2 policemen coming. When Lily asked her if she had seen her brother, she even denied that she asked Wei's mother for help. When her mother heard what she said, she was immediately dumbfounded. Sister Zhao. I didn't ask her to come over and show me the store. Don't talk nonsense. Your mother likes her children to sit and play with her. Why is she now babysitting my children? There are so many people in my store. How can I not see a single child? The landlady was afraid of getting into trouble, and she knew that this eldest girl from the Wei family was not easy to mess with, so after denying it, she kicked Lily and the others out. Mother Wei wiped her tears dejectedly. It's true. I really helped her. How could she forget? This kind of situation is not uncommon. I don't know how many people helped Mother Wei before giving birth. She really had the money to contribute and the strength to contribute. She was reluctant to give up food and drink. As soon as someone asked for it, she would immediately offer it with both hands. It's ridiculous. When she was waiting for her baby to be operated on, Wei Bei asked the people who had helped her in the past and asked for a loan, but they all pretended not to recognize her. How many times has Wei Bei eaten so much? Such a loss, but she never learns well. People already know what kind of person she is, so naturally they can deal with her as they please. I knocked on the door of every house and asked, but some parents refused to tell for fear of trouble. However, one child said that he remembered Wei Rui being pushed away by several children dressed like junior high school students. He only remembered that the direction he was pushed was towards the opposite side of the road. As a child, he couldn't tell where exactly he went. With the clues, it would be easy to handle. Although the house that Wei Bei rented for cheap was not under surveillance and there was no community, as long as she crossed the road, there should be surveillance on the opposite side. She hurried back with the 2 policemen. Checking the surveillance videos of several roads nearby, we finally found out what the junior high school students who took Wei Rui away looked like. It was nearly 3 o'clock in the evening when the matter was finished. Several caregivers breathed a sigh of relief. Finding Wei Rui was equivalent to saving their jobs and protecting them at the same time. Several people hugged each other and cried, but Wei's mother laughed in relief. After a big stone fell to the ground in her heart, she couldn't help but clasped her hands together. Fortunately, God has blessed me. It always helps if I do more good deeds. You see, in critical moments, someone will always reveal Xiao Rui's whereabouts. If she hadn't done something good, Wei Rui would not have disappeared at all. Lily was too lazy to tell her more at the moment, and just asked 2 policemen to help find Wei Rui's whereabouts. It took until almost dawn to find out. I found out the identities of these middle school students. They were first-year junior high students from a nearby school. They were so bold that when they saw Wei Rui sitting alone in a wheelchair and basking in the sun, he deliberately teased him and pushed him away. After a little distance, I saw that he didn't cry or shout. He just found it interesting, so I didn't care about it and went home. They found the place where they left Wei Rui. Is there anyone there? There are no cameras on that section of the road. If you want to find someone, you have to look for clues from several nearby videos. Everyone is exhausted after a night of tossing. Several caregivers dare not close their eyes and are all staring at the screen. Beihe mobile phone, suddenly it rang. Without blinking, she took out her phone. Zhu Mingchu's profile picture was flashing on it. Several people in the police station who were originally drowsy couldn't help but perked up when they heard the phone ringing. Vibrate. Wei Beihe, you come to the company now. Zhu Mingchuo's somewhat serious voice rang out, as if he was holding back his anger. Lily replied, I'm not free. Just as he was about to hang up, Zhu Mingchui heard she seemed to be unable to hold back what she said, and her voice became louder. Are you not free? I saw the resignation letter you typed. What do you mean? Yuan is young. I just hope that you, as the elder sister-in-law, can give her more time and don't conflict with her. Just start talking to her. Am I losing my temper? Are you taking marriage as a joke? You have only been married for a few days and you said you want a divorce. Now you have typed out your resignation letter. I know there is something wrong with me, but Yuan will get married in a few years. Zhu Yuan is actually not young anymore, she is only 5 years younger than Zhu Mingchui. Wei Beihe met Zhu Mingchui when he was 28. Now they have been dating for more than 3 years, and Zhu Yuan is almost 27 now. It will be a few years before she gets married. If she doesn't get married now, who else will she marry in the future? In the plot, Zhu Yuan was not married until she was 31 years old. In the end, she was determined to get married by messing up Wei Beihe and Zhu Mingchui. While Zhu Mingchui was in jail, she never left him, and he ran around looking for a lawyer, and finally touched Zhu Mingchu's heart, and the two were truly together. At this time, Lily felt bored when she heard Zhu Mingchui's words, not to mention Wei Rui hadn't been found yet, so she had no time to talk to Zhu Mingchui, so she interrupted Zhu Mingchui directly, I don't want to discuss these now, I have something to do at home, I'll talk about my resignation later. After saying that, she cut off the call directly. To be continued. Carrot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 800. Zhu Mingchu, who was on the other end of the phone, didn't realize that Lily had hung up on him until the beep sounded on his phone. He simply couldn't believe that Avenger Lily was so obedient to him. Every time he called, he had become accustomed to hanging up the phone first instead of listening to the sound of the other party hanging up, because it was the first time that this happened. Zhu Mingchu was still a little unaccustomed to the situation. Hearing the other party hang up the phone felt uncomfortable. At first, he thought Lily was joking when she said she wanted to divorce him. It was only then that Zhu Mingchu realized the problem. Maybe it's not as simple as he thought. Originally, he thought that Zhu Yuan would get married sooner or later, but now her behavior was a little too much, and Lily might be angry, but Zhu Mingchu didn't expect that she would be so angry. Just a few days after their wedding, the Zhu family made a fuss. He couldn't explain the divorce to his parents, relatives, and friends, not to mention that Zhu Mingchu didn't want to divorce Wei Beihe in his heart. He was willing to marry her because he had a certain affection for her, but he always thought that Wei Beihe would. Following himself, he didn't expect that she might really leave him one day. At this moment, Zhu Mingchu was really panicking. After Lily hung up the phone, someone noticed something strange in the surveillance video. Wei Rui's figure in a wheelchair appeared in the video. He was pushed away. Several junior high school students could only giggle when they pushed him away. They could only cry when they bullied him. After a while, they lost interest and threw him aside. He went home. Someone saw him appear in the middle of the road and pushed him away. The video behind him was no longer captured and was out of sight of the camera. Once you've identified your target person, it's much easier to find them. The face of the person who pushed Wei Rui away was saved from the video, and the identity of the person was quickly found using the police station's household registration system. When Wei Rui was found, it was already afternoon, and he was pushed to a shady corner. The person who pushed him away yesterday did not want to harm him, but those fun-loving junior high school students threw him on the road after they had enough fun. Side. There were many vehicles and pedestrians passing by, and there was no surveillance nearby. If someone bumped into him and ran away, the perpetrator might not be found. At that time, the sunset in the evening made him sweat profusely, and the passers-by just kindly pushed him to the shade. They originally wanted to send him to the police station, but Wei Rui sat outside for a long time in the afternoon and blew some wind. He was out in the sun again, and he was already in poor health. At that time, he developed the symptoms of a cold and a runny nose. The man had good intentions, but he was also afraid of causing trouble. He was afraid that his good intentions would cause trouble for the patient's family, and they would be misunderstood. So in the end he hesitated and left him there. I thought you didn't want him anymore. That's why I threw him on the roadside. I originally wanted to call the police, but I was afraid that you would say I was a kidnapper and what would happen to me, so. The person who pushed him to leave, he was a middle-aged man about 40 years old. He was already dying when Wei Rui found him. He stayed here all night last night and was extremely hot now. The middle-aged man looked a little embarrassed and was waiting with Lily and others. He explained a few words during the ambulance ride, and the police gave him a lesson. He nodded repeatedly. When he was about to leave, Lily took 200 yuan from her wallet to thank him. Although this man did something bad with good intentions, at least because he pushed Wei Rui away from the road, he did avoid the danger of being hit by a car. At first the man was embarrassed to ask for it, but later Lily insisted on giving it. Accepting it with some embarrassment, he nodded and left. As soon as he left, Lily asked, "Those junior high school students who pushed my brother to leave are still young, but if something like this happened, their parents should bear some responsibility, right?" Wei Rui's cheeks turned red and his whole body trembled. He turned 10 this year. 8 due to long-term illness, his face was so pale that it was almost transparent, his figure was thin and dry, and his soft hair looked a little yellow due to malnutrition. When Lily reached out and touched his forehead, he shivered twice and fluttered his eyelashes. His eyelids did not open, but he seemed to feel Lily's closeness and shouted, "Sister, sister, I cold." He is currently in the stage of fever, so he feels cold. His intelligence is not high, but he is like a child. He can instinctively feel whoever treats him well. When Lily heard him shouting like this, the pain in my heart suddenly welled up, and tears almost came out of my eyes. This is the emotion that belongs to the original owner. Wei Rui is like an indispensable presence in Wei Lily's life. When she was a child, she had no relatives or home. She didn't even have a surname at that time. After her stepfather came, although he was kind to her, his stepfather left too quickly. Although he gave her a surname and even temporarily gave her a stable life, his stepfather left in the end. Her mother was unreliable. When she had a younger brother, Wei Bei, he was actually happy in her heart. Yes, she finally had a goal to protect and a relative who was connected by blood. In a way, Wei Rui was like the spiritual support of the original owner, indispensable, but he still left in the end. Just because he left too fast, the original owner collapsed. The unsatisfactory marriage and the blow of life caused the original owner to have an extramarital affair in the end, which led to a series of tragic events. If Wei Rui was still alive at that time, the original owner would definitely not be able to survive because of him. Unfortunately, Wei Rui left in the end. Bei's mental strength is now 80, which is relatively high. The original owner's ability to affect her is normally very low, but when Wei Bei saw Wei Rui, her remaining emotions were still there. Her eyes turned red involuntarily, and Lily quickly suppressed the feeling. She reached out and gently grasped Wei Rui's hand in her palm, wrapped the coat in her hand around him, and comforted him gently. Sister knows that Xiao Rui is cold. Xiao Rui, just wait a little longer. The doctor's uncle and aunt will be here soon. They will cure Xiao Rui. Sister will make you your favorite sweet fruit. When he was young, his family had no money and little snacks. Wei Rui would sometimes cry because of his ignorance. Wei Lily would carry him on his back to pick up the unwanted fruits thrown away by others at the fruit stall, cut off the rotten parts and leave the good ones, and sprinkle them with sugar. After pickling, they were dried and used as snacks to coax him, and Wei Rui quickly calmed down. Mother Wei on the side had a look of pity and distress on her face. She came over to take a look at her son, then looked at Lily cautiously. After a while, she seemed to have gathered up the courage. Xiao He, those students are still children. They are in a critical period of learning. They didn't mean to push Xiao Rui here. She was afraid that Lily would find someone to cause trouble. Mother Wei thought optimistically, since her son has been found now, why bother bullying others anymore? Besides, which child is not naughty? They don't have bad intentions, so let's forget about it, huh? Wei's mother didn't sleep all night and looked very haggard. A few strands of hair hung down on her face. Her face showed a look of weakness and pleading. Her eyes were exactly the same as when Wei Rui begged for help. When Lily heard this, she couldn't help but sigh. Mother Wei was really a hot potato. She didn't have a good relationship with Zhu Mingchu during this mission. She could get a divorce. If she had trouble with Zhu Yuanyuan, she could talk back. In the plot, Wei Rui fell ill and died without resuscitation. Lily was prepared to take precautions. However, Wei's mother was the biological mother of the original owner and could not be beaten or scolded. If she wanted to arrange for her to stop causing trouble, she really had to think carefully. You said forget it, but Mom, you have seen Xiao Rui's current situation. He is sick and will be hospitalized for observation soon. Everything requires money. Do you still have money now? It is useless to speak harshly to someone like Mother Wei. If the tone is harsher, she can only cry silently with red eyes, as if she doesn't even dare to make a sound, but if she doesn't get angry, she will feel uncomfortable in her heart. The original owner is in this way. Sometimes she would be so angry that she would jump to her feet and even want to cry, but every time Wei's mother would cry before she did. Money? Ask someone to borrow some. When Mother Wei heard the word money, her shoulders suddenly shrank, and a look of panic appeared on her face. Lily was suspicious. She remembered that in the memory of the original owner, before she got married, in a few days, he transferred all the 100,000 he had saved into Wei Rui's account, preparing to leave it to him for medical treatment. This was saved by the original owner in the past few years except for paying Wei Rui's living expenses, medical expenses, and nursing expenses. She was thinking that she was getting married, so she kept all the property in her name. It was given to Wei Rui because Wei Lily spent nothing when she married into the Zhu family, not even the dowry jewelry. This became one of the reasons why Zhu Yuanyuan laughed at her after the marriage, and the reason why the Zhu family's parents were most dissatisfied with her. Reason: although the Zhu family did not lack her 100,000 yuan, Wei Bei's move was undoubtedly a slap in the Zhu family's face, so after the wedding, Zhu's father and mother immediately abandoned the company and went abroad. It was not that Wei Bei didn't understand the embarrassment she might encounter, but what she thought at the time was to buy that flashy jewelry, which would have been enough for her brother for a long time, so despite the pressure, she didn't buy anything. It had just been a few days, and when it came to needing money, Mother Wei actually seemed to have no money, and even said that she wanted to ask someone to borrow some money. Lily had a bad premonition in her heart, and her expression immediately changed. Somewhat ugly. You. She was about to speak, but a life passage had been opened not far away. The ambulance was driving towards here with its siren honking and its headlights flashing. Just when it stopped, the door was opened and several doctors jumped out. After coming down, she first measured Wei Rui's blood pressure and temperature. Lily began to answer the doctor's questions. Naturally, she had no time to ask about Wei's mother. Wei's mother breathed a sigh of relief involuntarily, and then she stood next to her son and touched him. His hair. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 801. Wei Rui stayed out all night this time. He was born with a weak body and had poor constitution. In addition, he got sick after he was born, so his body was very weak. He was already prone to colds, but now fortunately, it was a hot day. If it had been cooler, people would have died if I found him now. The family followed them into the ambulance, but the police did not follow. They said they would contact the parents of several junior high school students to discuss subsequent compensation matters, and then left one after another. When he entered the hospital, Wei Rui's pupils had begun to dilate, he was shaking with fever, he was unconscious, and his breathing was weak. His body temperature was measured and it was already 43 degrees. He was not sure whether it caused meningitis. The doctor first he was given medicine to stop the convulsions. Wei Rui's thin body was lying on the white sheets on the hospital bed. Wei's mother bit her lips, tears falling down like broken beads, and the 2 lines of tears flowed down her face. It slipped down, gathered on her chin and dripped in front of her clothes, crying silently and sadly. Everyone stayed up all night last night. When several caregivers saw that they had found Wei Rui, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Although they were still tired, at least everyone knew that their jobs were saved. At this critical moment, several of them also, regardless of how tired she was, she rushed to stay. Lily insisted on letting these people go back and rest first. When they woke up, she asked them to make something that Wei Rui could eat. She stayed in the hospital, and Wei's mother also wanted to follow a few of them. The nurse left together, but seeing that Lily didn't say anything, she timidly stayed behind. Is Xiaorui going to be okay? Seeing her son wearing a ventilator and barely feeling the rise and fall of his thin chest, Mother Wei was also scared. I couldn't help but ask my daughter. In fact, Wei Lily is like the backbone of Wei's mother. Although she is afraid of her daughter, she still relies on Lily at critical moments, but Lily was unhappy when she heard this. She said nothing, and Mother Wei lowered her head and did not dare to ask any more questions, looking a little pitiful. After struggling for several hours, the doctor said if the fever could not go down, Wei Rui's hope of surviving is very small. Unfortunately, Lily has just entered the mission and has no internal energy in her body. Otherwise, if she can use spiritual power to regulate Wei Rui's body, it will not alleviate the pain he has suffered since childhood. But the effect would be much better if combined with treatment. At this moment, she could only use physical methods to forcibly cool down Wei Rui and give him a lot of boiled water. It allowed him to urinate quickly to cool down. It was getting dark outside, and Wei Rui's body temperature finally dropped gradually. The doctor breathed a sigh of relief. After this, Wei Rui, who was already pale, looked even more pitiful. Lily was sitting next to him, and his hands were as thin as chicken feet. And because of cerebral palsy, his body was not well developed, and several of his fingers were bent at abnormal angles, which looked a little weird. Lily held his hand in her palm and said nothing. Mother Wei was sitting in the corner, looking like she wanted to come but didn't dare. The nurse outside the ward knocked on the door. Lily turned her head and nodded towards the glass door of the ward. The nurse opened the door and said cautiously, "Ms. Wei. You haven't gone through the admission procedures yet. Because of Wei Rui. Wei Bei was familiar with almost everyone in the hospital. The situation was urgent just now. In order to save the patient, it seemed that Bei was really worried about her brother. Anyway, Lily is married to Zhu Mingchu again, so she won't miss out on the medical expenses. People at the hospital knew about the Zhu family's situation, so they didn't urge her to pay at that time. Now Wei Rui's condition had stabilized, and people urging her to pay came. Lily nodded and glanced at Mother Wei. Mother Wei's face suddenly turned pale, and she stood up. She followed the nurse out with some embarrassment, but she did not leave. Through the glass on the door, Lily saw what she seemed to be saying to the nurse. The nurse's face did not appear in the glass frame and could not be seen, but Lily suddenly remembered what Wei's mother had said before about asking someone to borrow money, and her heart sank and put Wei Rui's hand into the quilt, then walked to the door and pulled it open. I'll borrow the phone to go back and borrow money. Just give me a few more hours. Wei's mother was begging the nurse in a low voice before she had time to tell her not to tell her about this. Daughter, she didn't expect Lily to hear it as soon as she came out. She trembled, with a look of panic on her face, glanced at the nurse, and quickly lowered her head when she saw Lily. Wait a moment, Lily smiled at the nurse. The nurse breathed a sigh of relief and left quickly holding her things. Lily crossed her arms and stared at Mother Wei. I transferred 100,000 yuan into Wei Rui's account 10 days ago. Wei Rui is among the people who have been denied insurance due to special reasons for his illness. However, he can purchase residence medical insurance in the community and local area, and can claim a small amount of money, as well as there is a certain subsidy, but because sometimes the medicine used to rescue him is imported, the price is inevitably high. Generally, most of the time it is paid for by oneself, and rarely when it can be reimbursed. It is because of this that Wei Lily feels particularly stressed about money. It was never enough, and she cherished every penny. That's why she was able to save an extra 100,000 yuan from herself in more than 4 years of working. On weekdays, the clothing and footwear company even paid the dressing fee, which was a huge savings. Save 100,000. Hearing Lily mention the 100,000 yuan, Mother Wei suddenly felt a little wilted. A few days ago, people from the temple came out to beg for alms, saying they were destined to be Buddhas. It had been more than 24 hours since she had closed her eyes. Lily felt her forehead tightening and loosening in pain. Mother Wei was still telling her this. She interrupted Mother Wei impatiently. Tell the important point. The people at Nanshan Temple can no longer support themselves. They have adopted some orphans and often give alms to some poor people, so they come out to ask for alms. What's more, if you believe in Buddhism and do good deeds, your achievements will be engraved on the Sans Hung stone. So what? Mother Wei didn't dare to say any more. Although Lily guessed the result, she still asked. Mother Wei was forced to cry silently again. She cried for a long time. Seeing that Lily had no intention of comforting her, her daughter's calm eyes looked at her as indifferently as a stranger. Mother Wei panicked again. Chaos again. So, I donated the money. After saying this, she closed her eyes, not daring to look at Lily's face now. She was originally waiting for Lily to get angry, and for her to drink at herself again, scolded again. This was Wei Lily's usual pattern in the past after she found out that she was in trouble. When Wei's mother donated money, she only thought that the money could help more and more useful people, so she didn't think too much about it, even after donating the money. She felt very happy thinking that the poor people could live a better life because of this money. It was not until Lily said she needed money today that she remembered that something was wrong. Go and get the money back, Lily sneered, not bothering to get angry with people like Mother Wei, so she said directly, turned around and opened the door to go in. It would be okay if she was scolded like before. Mother Wei knew her daughter's character and she would always find a way to solve the problem after scolding her. But now Lily didn't scold her and didn't even mean to pay attention to her. Mother Wei suddenly she started to panic a little, and she hurriedly wanted to reach out to pull Lily. But that money can help more people, and if the money is left in the bank card, there won't be much interest. It can feed more children. I don't care about you, and I don't care whether people have enough money to eat. I only know that Wei Rui is lying in the hospital now and has no money to pay for medical expenses. Lily looked at Wei's mother and said coldly, and Wei's mother whispered back, "Look, ask Ming Chu to borrow some. I want to borrow it from him." As soon as Lily said this, Mother Wei nodded and wanted to borrow the phone from her. She didn't hear the sarcasm in Lily's words at all, and she even breathed a sigh of relief. His eyes became cold. "Don't mention my name. You have to think clearly about when to pay it back and how to pay it back. Don't think that I have the ability to pay it back for you, and don't think that he is my husband. No need to pay it back. Let me tell you clearly that I am going to divorce Zhu Mingchu, and it will not be easy for your daughter to sleep with others and earn a few cents. If you borrow the money and cannot pay it back, then it will be your responsibility." Mother Wei didn't expect her to say that. She originally stretched out her hand to borrow the phone from her, but suddenly froze, with a panicked look on her face. "Why do we need a divorce? Why do we need a divorce? Isn't it just a good thing? We have only been married for a few days, how can we get a divorce? With a mother like you, all the gold and silver will be emptied. Do you think Zhu Mingchu is stupid?" Lily touched her hair. She had not put it down all day long. Her scalp felt uncomfortable, so she reached out and took off the clip, letting her hair fall down behind her. Mother Wei felt a little sad when she heard what she said. Ming Chu doesn't look like this kind of person. Lily was still stretching her hand to rub her head, and laughed when she heard this. What kind of person is he not? What kind of person do you think you are? In short, I have no job and no income now. You have to pay for Wei Rui's hospitalization. Come back. If you insist on donating the money and don't care about your son's life or death, I have no choice. In the past, Wei Bei was so capable that she shouldered everything. Even the responsibility that was supposed to be Wei's mother was shouldered by her, so that in the end, Wei's mother was like a person being protected in a shell. Like a little chicken, he can still maintain this innocence and simplicity. This is not the first time that something like this has happened. The former Wei Lily would always find a solution after crying and making a fuss. Mother Wei has also developed a habit of it, as if she always has someone to solve the problem for her if she gets into trouble. After the aftermath, Lily was not prepared to spoil her like that. She would get the money back just as she had given it away. Mother Wei had never earned much money with her own hands in her life, and she always got it so easily from others, so she feels that money comes easily and goes away quickly. To be continued.